Hey guys, so it's Hobie Hill with Deep Dungeon Games, and so we've been kind of going through the different approaches to world building and the whole world building concept. And today we're going to cover the macroscopic and microscopic approaches to these approaches, right? So in this entire series, what we're doing is we're taking the idea of approaching world building from a very broad perspective, right? And this is just like coming down to I want to create a world like the one behind me. Now, that being said, it's almost daunting because there's so much to go through. Rivers, mountains, forests, what do I name it? What do I do? Bays, seas, oceans, lakes, ponds. I mean, the list goes on and on with terrain features. I mean, you can really get crazy with it. So I feel like these two are basically along the same lines. They're just polar opposites. And what I like to think of is like an hourglass, right? So it's almost as if with the macroscopic, you're starting at the top of the hourglass as you're here on the top and you're the sand funneling down into a narrower point, right? So you're funneling into a tinier hole, right? So you're starting big and you're working small, okay? And that's important because a lot of times, depending on what type of person you are, you can really develop better by going from a broader perspective and narrowing down slowly over time. And that's actually one of the approaches that I used when I created my world, was that more macroscopic. I'm a visual person. And so that being said, I see things better when I can see the big picture, right? So I can see all of it and I know what I'm looking at. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I can start narrowing down and putting my grains of sand down the hole one at a time. Okay. But the microscopic approach is you're starting at the smaller portion where the sand actually drops into and funnels into the lower portion of the hourglass. And you're starting at that point, right? And then you're going down. So that means is you're going to start at like a village or a kingdom even, or maybe even a city or a town, depending on the level of micro you want to go with. I mean, it really depends on what type of area you're going to focus with. And I think this also ties to your campaign. And I think this is also important for people that only want to focus on the parts that are important, which I think you can also do that with the macroscopic approach, but it's hand in hand, right? That being said, with the microscopic, you're definitely going to start from a very narrow point and then go broader over time. Now, while these two are very similar, they're contrastically different, right? With the macro, you're only going to develop parts that really have to happen, right? So you need a world, you need a visual, and so you're probably going to draw a map or something along those lines, right? Probably just some simple little outline or sketch will be fine. And then you're going to start throwing pins on a map or something along those lines to be like, okay, cool, this is awesome, I got this. The reverse of that is the microscopic, which I feel like is almost over the top. And also, I don't like to sandbox my players or railroad them, I'm sorry. And I want to basically give them a lot to play in. So what I did is I basically threw a dart on the board to where my players would start, and I gave a reason to why that would exist and the reason why they collected there and all that kind of stuff, right? So I had the broad picture, and then I narrowed it down to where I had to and developed that area over time. But even then, I developed from a larger point. And if you look right here, I have something called the Maghoy Waste, and this is actually where they started. And I only developed small bits of areas around that, right? So I developed the entire region, which is actually one of the federations of free cities in my world, actually owns that kind of strip of land. At one time, it was a ocean, but during the Primordial Wars, basically, it was the world kind of changed, very cataclysmic in a sense, but now it's a salt flat, right? So it's very desert, very dry, very arid, not very populous, right? So that area is probably one of the richest areas in my world right now because I'm developing, I'm creating, but I'm also creating slowly over time. And as my players progress into a new area, I develop more and more of my world, okay? So in some ways, I'm kind of using that macro and micro aspects, right? So I only develop the parts that I have to, but again, It's all about how you want to do it and your flavor, okay? But in the micro, right? So I feel like with the micro, you're going to be developing a small village. So say you wanted to start in this little portion right here, right? You can't see that, but there's a little tiny town there called Stilt Town. Okay, and it's a village aspect, basically a large village. So I consider it a town. That's why it's on the map. I only put the towns and the cities and anything bigger than that on my map. So only on my continent maps and stuff like that, right? On my city maps or my world maps, I really only try to put massive cities or like capitals, basically, of a kingdom or something along those lines. But that micro, what you're going to do is you're going to start with that little tiny town there, and you're going to basically cover all the aspects of that town, and then go out from there, right? So if you want to like look at that, it's like the reverse of a blooming flower, right? So if you're going with a micro, you're going to be like a blooming flower. So you're going to start with a little tiny pod, and you're going to bloom outwards, okay? So kind of a clover leaf around the world, okay? I think that's a good aspect. So just circles, maybe, or octagons. And only develop, I would say maybe two hexes outside of your respective area that you're trying to develop. And then with the micro, you're going to develop pretty much the macro, you're going to develop pretty much all of it in a simple form. Okay, you're not going to cover all the history, all the aspects, all the things. You're just going to take it and put everything on the map and kind of start throwing stuff at the map and where you want it, right? And I think that's the major difference. Is one is highly detailed but small. The other one is not detailed but large. So it's very much that aspect, right? Yeah. So I think I covered the micro and the macro aspects of this pretty well. Let me know if you got any questions, comments, or if I need to develop better or anything along those lines. I'm really trying to get better at this. I'm getting a mic in, so maybe you'll get better audio here soon. Visual, I don't have any lights. I have my tiny apartment light. That's about all I have. Hope you guys are enjoying the videos, and we're going to be covering the rest of the approaches here soon. Thanks, guys.